Welcome, everyone. This is Automation Nation. This season is dedicated to golf professionals. I'm your host, Joe Langton. Today, we have Eric with us, and Eric has been involved with some pretty amazing projects, and that's one of the reasons I was really happy to have him on the show. Eric, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself before I start bringing those things up, and let the audience know who you are and where you're taking the call from today.
Thank you, Joe. Well, my name is Eric Rule. I'm the general manager at Kinloch Golf Club. And as Joe said, I've been to some pretty amazing places over my career. I'm talking to you today from my house in Glen Ellen, Virginia, because I am suffering from COVID this week. So I have been hiding at home all week. But that's not typically me. Usually I'm at work pretty much 7 days a week. My career began a long time ago, the little Donald Ross golf course where I started washing dishes back in 1974, called Brooklyn Country Club. And I had a great mentor there by the name of Mary Hastings, who told me that I would be really good in this industry, and I didn't believe her. So I went to RIT to study engineering. After a year, I said, I don't want to sit behind a desk. I don't want to deal with a slide rule. At that point in time, computers were cards, and I didn't really care for all that. So I got out of college. I changed my major to hospitality management. When I got out of college, I went to work for hotels for a year, and then an opportunity came up at Oak Hill Country Club in Rochester, New York, that was really intriguing. And I went to Oak Hill as the banquet manager, was there for 4 years, and became the general manager the year of the 1989 U.S. Open. And I spent 27 years at Oak Hill, and we had 5 major championships while I was there. They started with the U.S. Open, went to the 1995 Ryder Cup, went to the 1998 U.S. Amateur, the 2003 PGA Championship, and the 2008 Senior PGA Championship. For many years, people had told me, hey, you can't spend your whole life in one place. And so I finally decided back in 2012 that I wanted to try something different. And an opportunity came up in China to go build a golf course. And at the time, it was just a golf course and remodel a clubhouse. So I went there. We were there for 4 years. My wife came over and joined me after 2, and she stayed with me the other 2. And just really, really enjoyed that concept. It was difficult. I enjoyed working in China. It was difficult to work with the people. But after 4 years, the Chinese government decided that they wanted to put a moratorium on all golf construction. And we had planned on building a Club Corp style development in China. And without the ability to rebuild anything, it was time to head back to the U.S. So I came back to the U.S. I took an interim job at Sleepy Hollow Country Club, which is up in Westchester, New York. And I was there it was interim for 6 months. I left Sleepy Hollow and was hired at Hazeltine National Golf Club. And I was there for the last 4 years. And then back at the beginning of this year, I got a call from someone who said, hey, there's this really cool golf club down in Virginia called Kinloch, which I had heard of, and they are looking to have a general manager at the club. And so I came down and interviewed, and I started on April 1st, and I absolutely love the golf club. It is really spectacular, great membership. My wife and I are adapting to Richmond really, really well. And, there's a lot of things that we're changing at Kinloch. We've really not reinforced, but republished the rules of the club. I mean, it's one of the things that makes great clubs great, is having really, really good communication and, a sense of place, rules that affect everybody. A lot of really good things. So we're doing a lot of change at Kinloch, which is one of the key things that I've done in my whole career, is really focus on change for clubs.
And there's a lot to undress there from that introduction. That was a great intro. I've interviewed a lot of people on podcasts before, and as you were going, I'm like, man, I'm not gonna have any questions to ask. He's hitting it all. This is perfect,
Oh, there'll be a lot of them.
So first of all, I've got a comment for the people that are not watching on YouTube and just listening in their car or headset. You look pretty good for a guy that has COVID. So it sounds like it must be a pretty mild case. I'm assuming, or is this have you already had COVID once and this is the second time
No,
around for you, or no?
no, never had it. I have been vaccinated and boosted and all that good stuff, but it's not been too bad. It's really more tiring than anything else.
Well, you look good for having COVID, so good for
Thank
you. I'm
you.
happy. I actually had COVID twice, and the first time it landed me in the hospital, and the second time it was like nothing. So I will say I've had both sides of the gamut. So I'm happy to hear you're doing okay. Um,
Oh, good.
so I think you mentioned five championships, but um, have you? I think you've been the host of seven total in your career, or
Seven total. Yeah, that was five at Oak Hill. So we had the Pacific Links China Championship that was almost to come. It was about a month before, and there was a huge explosion in the port city of Tianjin. And we had bleachers going up, we had tents going up, we had everything done, and this explosion blew sodium cyanide up in the atmosphere, and it rained yellow foam for the next week. And the PGA Tour decided to cancel the event about 3 weeks before. So that was one of them. The other one that I worked on was the 2019 KPMG PGA or Women's PGA Championship at Hazeltine. That event was really spectacular. The ladies really enjoyed it and said it was, and they probably always say this, but they said it was one of the best events that they'd ever had on the tour. Our food at the club was really highly rated. So we were really happy to host that. And then the last event that I've got at least coming up is Kinloch is hosting the 2024 Mid-Amateur Championship with the USGA. And we were just up in Wisconsin last week to Erin Hills for this year's Mid-Amateur Championship with a few people from the committee and the club. And we are really looking forward to it. It's going to be very exciting. It's match play. It starts with 340 some odd players and wills down to two players on the last day. And the match play, it'll be a 36-hole final match play championship, very similar to the U.S. Amateur that I hosted back in 1998 at Oak Hill.
so how much planning? I mean, how much, I feel like some listeners will get it because they're in your industry, but others may not. I mean, how much work's involved in getting set up for an event like this, and what's it like to kind of manage through it?
Sure. Well, my first two events were the U.S. Open and the Ryder Cup, and you can't get much bigger than that. So, a lot of these are certainly there's the same amount of planning, not maybe as much. I mean, I don't think we have to plan for the president to come to Kinloch for the Mid-Amateur Championship like we did with the Ryder Cup. But there's a lot of planning. It's years in the planning. We just have been putting our chairs together at Kinloch this summer. We've got a tournament manager working for us now, and she's out of Atlanta. She's doing a great job. USGA, really, they're coming up for their first site visit. And the 2024 is what Kinloch was supposed to have in 2020. They were going to have the Mid-Am then, and it got canceled because of COVID. So there's a little bit of familiarity, but the USGA is coming up in late October, and we're going to spend the better part of a day and a half talking about what's going on and what we need to plan for. We're already working on sponsors. We already have a few sponsors, which they're really not sponsors or supporters according to the terminology we're supposed to use. But, it's really good to see the enthusiasm in this market for an event like the Mid-Am.
Yeah, that's I think, like I said, for myself, I'm learning golf as I'm coming into the industry with our automation. So I like to ask these questions because it's good to kind of realize the kind of the pressures that, people like yourself are under to get ready for these events. So thanks for expanding on that. So I'm kind of interested in the China, working in China, and I actually didn't know about the raining down phone. So I kind of I want to learn a little about that, even though it's going to be nothing related to much in the show. Just I'm interested. But
Sure.
what was that experience like? You said it was kind of hard to work with them. I mean, of course, the typical language barrier type of thing, but I just wonder, going from like a capitalist country like ours to a country like China, like how those things intermingle and mix. If you can expand on any of that.
Well, I would say that it was difficult to understand what the final outcome was supposed to be. We had a single owner, very nice gentleman, really helped, gave us a vision for what he wanted. But as far as day-to-day decisions, they were all pretty much left up to me. And, the golf course construction, we had a golf course superintendent from Toronto who was in charge of that. So the two of us pretty much made all the decisions as to what direction we wanted to take the club and what we were hoping to do, set the rules, set the policies, what kind of merchandise was going to be done. But it was difficult to work in that, there is a language barrier. And even though you have interpreters, sometimes the interpreters can misinterpret what you're trying to say. My interpreter was really good, but I was in a lot of meetings where the interpreter might say something to someone, and my interpreter would stop her and say, "Oh, no, that's not what he meant. He meant this." So you're not always sure that your message is getting across the way you would want that message to be. Also, the Chinese, the U.S. has only been in China for 45, 50 years now. And, while at the time I was there, it was kind of trending, communism had kind of slid out and it was more socialistic, kind of going towards U.S. style vision, where the Chinese were actually looking to make as much money as they could possibly do. And we spent about $75 million on that project, building the golf course and then remodeling the clubhouse. And, in a capitalistic society, you kind of know what you're getting, but in a society that's partially communistic, partially socialistic, and partially capitalistic, it's a little bit weird trying to figure out where everybody stands. We had we had a number of contractors, some that were really, really good. The contractor we used to build the clubhouse or to remodel the clubhouse was spectacular. And then we had some contractors that weren't so good. We had a tree company that brought us all pretty much diseased, dead, and bug-infested trees. And we refused to take them. And he told us we couldn't find any better trees than what he was delivering us. So we packed up 5 or 6 people in a car. We drove to Manchuria and we found the trees we were looking for. So you can always get things done. Everything's possible in China, but almost everything is difficult to get done. So I would say, as far as the experience, certainly I think times are changing right now, and I don't know if I'd want to be over there in the current environment. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. My wife enjoyed it. We had one of my children that came over to visit, and she had a good time. She had just gotten married. She'd been on her honeymoon and then came to China all within about 3 or 4 weeks. So she was a little tired when she left.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, I mean, would you say that was probably one of the most challenging things in your career, doing that, or was it a blur for you? I mean, I feel like something like that might have gone by so fast, because it just sounds like it'd be like a very hectic, high-paced, quick-paced environment. I think you said, what, 75 million in 4 years? I mean, there's a lot going on in 4 years.
Yeah, it was a challenge, but I would say that it was one of the highlights, and I'm really, really glad that I did it. I was kind of on the fence. I had been offered another job down in Florida, which probably would have been the safe bet to do. But, I was 56 years old and I wanted to try something different. My brother and my dad had both worked in China and talked highly of it. So, as far as uh, the highlight, I don't know if it would be the highlight. I think some of the major championships that I did would probably be the highlights of my career, but it certainly is a big part of it. And I've got stories that I can regale people with for hours about Chinese. Some of them I can't talk about with you, but certainly in private I could talk about a lot of them.
So here, I just picked your favorite thing that happened in China that you can talk about, and one of your least favorite things, and then we'll leave the China story behind us.
Sure. I would say, as far as China goes, everything's big in China. Everything's big. We went to the Harbin Ice Festival, and there were ice buildings that were 15 stories tall, and there was hundreds of thousands of people at it. So everything is big. I think, favorite stories. We met with the billiard king of China. He owns Star Billiards, and he gave everybody a pool cue that was autographed by all the world famous pool players at the time that he had. And just sitting down and having a discussion with somebody that you don't understand because he's speaking in Chinese and there's interpreters going back and forth. I mean, it was just a lot of camaraderie. You could go anywhere you wanted to go for dinner. You could have anything you wanted to have for dinner in China. The only time I got sick, I was eating at a Western restaurant that was over there. So that's the only time I ever got sick from food poisoning. As far as the things that were that I'd like to forget, I think the challenge of trying to work with people instead of against people. One of my favorite stories is when we were building our on-course restrooms. We were building 3 of them. And in China, most drains in restrooms, both men's and women's, go directly into the sewer. So you can smell sewer, urine, things like that coming right out of the floor drains and the sink drains and everything else. There's no P-traps. So when I was doing this, I said, Hammond was my architect. I said, I want to make sure that every drain has P-traps because I don't want to smell that smell that I smell in every urinal or toilet that you go into. So I said, okay. And I when I came home for Christmas, I brought P-traps back with me. And I showed them to the contractor, and he said, oh, okay, Meiwanti, that means okay, everything's good. So I said, okay, so they are building the first one, they're pouring the floor, and one of my grounds guys came in and said, Eric, they're pouring the floor, concrete, in comfort station number 1. So, all right, so I went out there, and the whole floor is poured. I said, and it's starting to harden by this point in time. So I said, get a jackhammer up all the floor drains. I want to see that the P-traps are in there. So they jackhammer the floor up and there's no P-traps. So they fix it. They put all the P-traps in. Next day, they're pouring the floor for the second one, and they didn't call me and say, come out and check it. So I went out. I said, get the jackhammer and jackhammer the floor up. There were no P-traps. So the 3 or 4 days later, they're pouring the floor in the third one, and they didn't call me. And it's like, wouldn't you think that by the third time they would know that I'm going to tell them to get the jackhammer out and jackhammer the floor up? We did, and there were no P-traps in it. All to save, maybe 4 P-traps in each restroom, maybe $20 at the worst case. But yeah, that was kind of the challenge. You always had challenges that were being thrown at you, and every project you did, that was kind of the hardship that you had to face.
Yeah, and then you question, because that's not even language barrier at that point. That's just unwillingness to change to what you wanted, and then saying this is just how we do it, so that's what we're going to do, right?
Yeah. It's all a decision for how much profit I could make. That's what it was. And if I save $20 on P-traps, That's $20 more in my pocket. But I don't even think they think about the probably $50 that it cost them to jackhammer the floor up and fix them.
Well, I was going to say it had to cost them a lot more to do that. Plus, they had to re-pour again for everything
Sure,
they hammered up. So,
sure.
the lack of that P trap probably cost them $200. It's probably more than that actually, but
Well,
I don't know what the labor rate is in China, but I would think
it's
that
pretty cheap.
yeah. So thanks for sharing that with us. It's always interesting. I mean, for myself, I've been to a lot of places in the United States, but I've never been to China, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. But
Sure.
I did the research. I thought it was pretty intriguing, that you did that there. So how is that club today now? I mean, do you have any tracking of it? I mean, what happened with it, or what's its functioning? How's it
It
functioning?
is still, so the owner was trying to build, we were going to build 7 golf courses. We had Tiger Woods, Greg Norman, Ernie Els, Phil Mickelson were all lined up to design one of these 7 other golf courses that were all existing golf courses, but we were going to redo all of them. And so when the project got shut down, the owner kept that as his personal kind of private, invite people over to play. And it still is that. He's trying to sell it right now. The moratorium that was supposed to last 3 years is still going on. So that's 7 years ago. So there's no golf development. You can't build any new golf courses in China. You can remodel what you have as long as you don't change the existing layout. So, most of them need a lot of work. And, I think the 27 Club was the name of that club. It still is in existence. The owner uses it as his private little place to entertain people. And I know it's up for sale, but I asked the golf course architect who was there maybe 2 years ago, and he said everything is being upkept really well, which is unusual for China. Usually they build things not to last. And one of the things we told the owner when we were doing this is, we're going to build everything to last for you. This is not a 5 or 10 year project for you. It's a 25 to 40 year project. And he was appreciative of it. And, it's still going pretty strong.
Excuse my ignorance on this, but why did they do that moratorium? Like, why did they stop it? Like, what happened? What changed to make them do that?
I think President Xi came into power about 2 years before that happened. And I think the political climate is such that they are trying to take China back towards communism. And any Western influence in China is going to be counterintuitive to that. We were given excuses like we're stealing the natural resources, even though we built $1.5 million water treatment plant to recycle all the water and clean all the water that we were using for irrigation. We're given a lot of different. It was said that golf was corrupting the Chinese businessman, which really couldn't be further from the truth. So, I think that I think it was a political climate, and we were just there at the time, and they wanted to try to knock out as much of the Western culture as they possibly could. And golf is, certainly a sport that's popular over there, but it's not highly played by the masses.
Yeah. Well, that all makes sense. I kind of assumed this, but I wanted to, not just assume, and so and I'm glad, because I'm sure there's other people who listen to the show that are happy I had you explain that. So over your 27 years, what were, besides what you did in China, what were some of your maybe toughest facility improvements, and maybe one of the most rewarding, at the other places you've been?
Sure. I think the most rewarding, when I was at Oak Hill, I mentioned to you in our previous conversation before the interview that I feel like I'm a change agent. I come in and I really grab things by the horns and really try to make strides towards not necessarily changing just to make changes, but to change to put the clubs in a better place. And at Oak Hill, when I started, Oak Hill was a very, very highly regarded golf course. It was in the top 30 in the United States. And we went out, we hired a really good ground superintendent who took us to number 10 in the United States in 2003 in Golf Digest. We spent, back in 1996, we did a major golf course renovation a major clubhouse renovation. We did golf course renovations too, but the clubhouse renovation at that time was about $7 million, which is probably close to $20 million in today's dollars. And we really changed the club completely. We got rid of the old formal dining rooms and we went to more casual grill room space. And we're a little bit ahead of our time. Took our grill room from 100 seats to 220 seats. And it was one of the most popular places to come for dinner in the western Rochester suburbs. But so getting Oak Hill through all those things was really exciting. In 2012, Golf World did a readers poll of all the readers in the United States, the golfers in the United States. And Oak Hill was named the #1 golf course in the United States by the readers of Golf World. And that was probably the culmination of being able to go in, build the clubhouse, redo the golf course, redo the bunkers, host the US Open, host the Ryder Cup, host the Senior PGA, the PGA. All those things added up to being named the #1 country club in the United States. And excuse me, I think that was probably the culmination of my 27 years at Oak Hill. And it comes down to leadership. It comes down to working with the people that you have. Some people work, some people don't. And, you have to deal with all kinds of people. But that certainly was the culmination. I hired a chef back in 1995 when we were getting ready to do the clubhouse, who was on the U.S. Culinary Olympic team several times. And, I learned what team is all about. I went to the Culinary Olympics. I saw these grown men cry over getting a silver medal instead of a gold medal, and how they were up for 24 hours trying to get things done. And the sense of team really set into me when I saw that. And I really try to get everybody involved in the club operation to be part of the team. That's the only way you're going to succeed, is to have everybody going in the same direction.
Yeah, and I think that's true to any industry. But I will say, when I've been traveling around, the one thing that I see is, people are in the same space, right, all the time, and you guys are always adapting to the elements, right? It's like, rain delays and is the course playable today? Because are you in a drought? Are you getting too much rain? And what I find is people have to work with each other to adapt to those things constantly, which I think kind of draws the team together, because the people that can't work with the people, I think they just find their way out, right? Or somebody
Absolutely.
has to,
Yeah, absolutely. And you need to understand the culture of the club. The culture of Kinloch is it's really private. It's special. Everybody tells me how special it is. There's rules, and there's many people that follow the rules, and rules are meant to be bumpers, right? You're going to stay between the lines, and there's always going to be somebody that's going to bump up against the edge. But team is really important, and having the people that buy into my vision for what I see as Kinloch being Kinloch while maintaining the culture. We're just introducing an app next week. It's the first app that Kinloch's had any kind of telephone presence. And the app gives the members the ability to look up their buddies, create their own golf groups, make their reservations, request their clubs. If they're coming to the club and they're going to play at the Country Club of Virginia, they can text the outside operations guys, and all they have to do is hit request my clubs at the front circle. and boom, their clubs are going to be there when they get there. It's being able to use technology without changing the culture of the club that makes things move a little bit better. They can be anywhere on the golf course and order a cheeseburger, and we will know where they are. We can go deliver that cheeseburger to them. So those are all little things. In the past, people would call us on their phone to the halfway house. Somebody gets cooks the cheeseburger and then goes out to the sixth hole, but they're playing a little faster. So they're actually halfway down the seventh hole and the employee doesn't know who they are. So there's just a lot of things that we can do as leaders to make it easier on our team. And yet we make it easier, but that gives them the opportunity to work a little bit harder.
Eric, I've got to use this opportunity to show that even though we're different industries, we're very aligned. So we made an app at AOS, my daughter and I, and I as you're telling me how you're doing this, there's a lot of things that make sense. So okay, and for people listening, to get you to expand their minds. So I'm assuming because of the app, it's showing their location, right? So when they're using the app, it says you allow us to share your location, so then your people can see this person. Maybe they're just driving to a blue dot on a map, right? Something like that, I'm assuming. So same thing for us. So people keep asking me how I'm going to scale nationally to help golf courses like yours to pick golf balls and wash them and do all stuff. But we do the same thing. So we do a lot of cable stuff. So like if there was a cable in the ground and it's a twisted pair, so it cancels out, our app will show where it was in the first place. And as long as you're carrying the phone, it tells you within a foot of where I'm at, there's a wire here, and it helps us find. So there's so much you can do with the app. So how did you guys build it? Did you outsource that? Did you use a third party?
No.
Like how did you get your app built?
We outsourced it. We used a company called Pacesetter, and they've been around maybe 7 or 8 years now, and they do just a phenomenal job of getting that information together. And the possibility, they tie in with our accounting software people. And so a member can look at their statement online. They can see what their charges were on their phone. Everybody's got their phone now. Very few people use a website anymore. You need to have it, but everything is at your phone. Everything we do is on our phone. I drove to the club last night at 8:00 because I wanted to go when nobody was there. There were some people in the dining room, but nobody was in the office. And I got halfway there and I realized I forgot my phone, and I started to panic. Like, what am I going to do?
Now you're going to need. You guys are going to need like spare tablets that people they can get on loan, at least if they just communicate with Wi-Fi or something,
Well, that's another thing that's included in this package is we have Wi-Fi, we have tablets throughout the club, and it allows us to identify when members walk into the golf shop. It'll pop their picture up so that the staff, who might be temporary, might be seasonal, doesn't know who that person is. Boom, it pops up and it shows who that person is. It'll show their preferences. What size shirt do they wear? What color do they like? We're taking all that information from our point of sale system and tying it into this. What do they like to eat or drink? We have 3 guest cottages on property. Somebody can be sitting in their guest cottage and they run out of Bud Light. And they can go on the app and they can just request Bud Light. And this, boom, I'd like to order a case of Bud Light and 3 pizzas. And boom, it goes to an iPad. It pops up in the dining room. The guys know it. They can get it out to the cottage for those guys within 5 or 6 minutes. I mean, that's the kind of thing that makes people feel special. And technology can make that so much easier.
Yeah, so now we're getting, this is some Automation Nation conversation right now. This is awesome. So I don't know if you know who Ben Bauer is, but I respect Ben a lot. He was one of the first people I really started to work with in golf, and I was always amazed at how he knew the members' names, and I found myself constantly thinking like I don't know how this guy does it. I would ask him, like, do you flashcard this? Because and you can tell it, the members' faces light up when you know their name. When they walk in and you know it. And what you're doing is you're replicating that
Sure.
across all your staff members, your temporary, your temp help. Now they're smiling when everybody knows their name. That really has to be it's such a member experience for them that you guys have done that.
We're all about the member and guest experience at Kinloch. We want everybody to walk in and feel like you check your mind at the front gate and you go out and you just have a great day. You have a great lunch, you spend time with friends, you come in, you have drinks and dinner, and it's effortless. We want to be there. I had a gentleman the other night, excuse me. I ran into the club at 8:30 on must have been Wednesday night or Tuesday night. And as I was going in, I had my mask on and I said, pardon me, but I've got COVID and I'm, got a mask on. He says, yeah, but I'm looking for my golf clubs. I said, well, I can take you to look for your golf clubs if you want me to, or I can let you take a cart. You can run up to the cottage. He said, no, you can drive me. So as we're driving out to the cottage, his clubs are sitting behind his car, all set, ready to go. And he was like, wow, that's service. The people knew who my car was, where it was. So, and the reason is we have a lot of guys who've been there a long time. Everybody comes up to the front circle at the club. They get their bags out. They know whose bag goes with which car. And they can put them out there and, they ask, are you staying tonight? And he said, no, I'm going to be just staying for drinks and dinner, and then I'm going to go. Well, they knew where his car was. So they went and put his clubs out right by the car. So that's the kind of experience that we want. We want people to come in and feel like the whole day has been effortless.
And so being someone that sells automation myself, people are always asking me like, well, what's it going to cost and what's my ROI? But when you bring stuff like this up, how do you associate a cost to the benefit at the end? Because it's really more about an experience, right?
Right.
So as I'm hearing this, it's like, if I were a member or a guest and I walk in and you guys just seem to know everything about me, that's an experience that you really can't measure monetarily, but it's an experience that's going to get talked about. I mean, I've been to a lot of golf clubs, and I've never. I didn't know that this technology existed actually, so hopefully some people listen to the show
Sure.
and then search that out, so, one of the things that I found in golf, and not take us off the topic of this because we could probably talk about this for another 30 minutes, but the thing that I've seen, and you've been in the industry, for a while, I've seen quite an evolution in making golf clubs more like a family club. It's like I look at sometimes when I go visit some of these older clubs, I feel like, and it's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast, by the way, is to inspire some people that are set in their way that want it to be some guys smoking cigars, drinking whiskey in a back room, that as those people start to die off, there's nobody to fill their shoes, right? The clubs that are really like vibrant and have people are the ones that figure out a way to get family, right? So like how, when you guys got voted America's favorite club, like what are some of the amenities you had that made that possible, do you think? I mean, because it's got to be more than just golf, right?
Sure. Well, Oak Hill Country Club has got a lot of everything. We had about a 90,000 square foot clubhouse. We had room to be able to seat 300 people for dinner and a banquet, and 260 or so for dinner a la carte for a membership. We had a swimming pool that we rebuilt during the time that I was there, new sports complex, paddle tennis courts, 4 tennis courts. We had 8 bowling lanes that were within the clubhouse. So it was a club that back in the 40s, when the club put the bowling lanes in, they were looking forward to how can we keep people here during the Depression? How can we get people out here? And clubs are sanctuaries. Clubs are places where you can go and, you get away from the real world a little bit. Some are expensive, some aren't, but it's your place to be away from home. And, I think we groom cross country trails in the wintertime. We had a lot of things. Country Club of Buffalo, right down the road from us, about 60 miles. They had skeet shooting out in an open field. We couldn't discharge any guns within the town of Pittsburgh, so we couldn't do that. But clubs adapt and clubs look for ways to really offer things to their membership. And you're right about ROI. Yeah, there are some improvements you're going to make for a return on investment, but how do you figure out the cost of an ROI on an irrigation system for a golf course? I mean, it's going to cost you $3 or $4 million to put that irrigation system in. Yeah, you're going to have better conditions, but the return on that's, it's a 20-year lifespan. Is it going to add $200,000 a year to your revenue? Probably not. But as far as the members go, if the golf course is good and it's healthy and it's watered the way it's supposed to be, that's a cost of doing business. And some of it has an ROI, some of it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes when you look at automation, like one of the things that I found, I think that's why I like subscription model things, and because my stuff's in a subscription model, it's like sometimes when you can put something in a subscription model, I'm assuming like your app, however you guys are doing that, I'm assuming it's something similar. It's more of an experience. It kind of levels you up, and then it just gets spread over the operational expenses of the club versus, what's the CapEx, how do we appreciate this out, and what's the ultimate value when we're done. So, I think that's what's great about doing it that way in technology, because then as new technology comes, it's always getting updated and leveled up, So, that's the thing I urge people to look at with this, is to say, does it help the experience? Does it help the employees? And does it help retain employees? Because that's another thing I see too, is a lot of times people are like, well, do I get to replace a team member or whatever with this? And I'm like, well, you should actually be looking to retain them. If this helps make their job more comfortable, or let's say if you're somebody that doesn't learn well with flashcards, and Eric can remember everybody's name, but Joe can't. Well, if we have a system in place where Joe can look just as good as Eric, well, now I might stay there because I'm not intimidated by Eric.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So that's the stuff that's really cool about what's coming with technology to really help organizations. And so that's my 2 cents on that. I think.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely the case. If you go and it costs you $3 a month for a member to be able to have all the information from the club at their hand, is that worth it? If it's going to cost you $20 a month, maybe it's not. But I don't think you can actually sit down and say, okay, my return on this is going to be 3 years. It just doesn't work that way. It's a club. We all need to be proud of our club. And having something like that gives you pride is just as important as having a new irrigation system or a new clubhouse.
Yeah, totally. So, I can really see the COVID starting to get your throat. So I want to actually, I always like to find out about great leaders and their background, right? Because I think we all, we all became great leaders somehow. So tell me a little background on yourself personally, family upbringing. I know you said your daughter just got married when she was in China. So tell me a little bit about the personal side of you.
Sure. I grew up, I'm the oldest of 6 boys, grew up in Rochester, New York. Brookley Country Club that I mentioned was about 2 miles down the road. And I worked there, and 3 of my other brothers worked there as well. My dad worked at Eastman Kodak at the time. There were 60,000 employees in Rochester, and now I think there's less than 5. But we didn't have a lot, and we all worked hard. We all had to go out and get what we needed to do what we needed to do. I met my wife in Rochester. She was a lifelong resident. She'd been there forever and never left until we went to China. I've been married 40 years this past September 11th. So we did celebrate our September 11th anniversary, was the year of our 20th anniversary. So kind of ominous date to have, is an important date in your life. But, we knew each other since we were in fourth or fifth grade. Never dated her until we got through college, and we just happened to run in each other, and I took her water skiing, and that was the end of it. We have three great kids. They're all older. My son, Steven, lives in Rochester, New York still. He hasn't moved away. Middle daughter, Heather, is married, and she has two little girls, which are the light. My wife was up there this week, so she didn't have to deal with my COVID. They're the light of our life, and we really enjoy them. And then our youngest daughter, Stephanie, is an equestrian person. She had her own business in Montana, raising, training, and teaching riding lessons. She just moved from Montana to Lexington, Kentucky, and she got married last year. A beautiful ceremony up in Bozeman, Montana. And, we're really fortunate. My brothers are all still around. One of them lives in Florida. The rest of them all live in New York. But we get together, not as much as we used to when my mom and dad were alive. But, there's a good sense of family and a good work ethic among everybody, and both my family and my wife's family. The kids all work hard. It's just, if you have a really, really supportive family, you can do the things. Being a club manager is tough. I mean, there were a lot of times when I couldn't make the baseball game because Mrs. Johnson's bridal shower or tea was going on and I couldn't make it. And my wife, fortunately, was very good to be able to understand that. Her father was an OBGYN, so it could be Memorial Day and he had to go deliver a baby. So from my perspective, that was a really good thing because she understood what it was like to take off when you needed to go. But we've had the opportunity to do some really good things. We've been to, God, I couldn't even tell you, I think I've been to 12 or 13 Ryder Cups, just as many US Opens, and we've always had a chance to go and see how other clubs do it. What can we take from that to make it better? But I think, mentors are important. I had a lot of good people that worked for me over the years, and I was fortunate to work for some really good people. I mentioned Mary Hastings at the beginning of the show, and she was the manager of Brookley for many years. She was a waitress that got promoted to the manager, and she just understood the value of education and mentorship and put me in touch with the right people. She put me in touch with the person at Oak Hill Country Club who offered me the position, and I got my opportunity to go there. So, as far as me, I feel fortunate. I'm lucky. I worked hard to get the things that I wanted to get, but I've been really lucky to experience some really good things in the game of golf. Working with Craig Harmon at Oak Hill for many years, and meeting his brother Butch and Bill and Dick. Having lunch with Tiger Woods in China after he wore my socks at the 2003 PGA Championship, and he remembered it.
Hold on. Why did he have to wear your socks? Okay, I can't let you glaze over that. Let me hear the story there.
All right. So during the US Open, my kids were all working. The youngest one wasn't old enough to do it, but they were all working in the player dining room that day. And Tiger's trainer came up to me and said, "Eric, Tiger just went out to the first tee, went to pull his socks up and tie his shoes, and his socks ripped." And I said, the pro shop's closed. The golf shop for the PGA Championship, I doubt they have any socks, but I got a pair of socks in my locker if you want to wear them. I mean, they're clean. He said, "Sure." So I got the pair of socks. I put him on the cart. We drove out to the second tee. And Tiger took his shoes off, put these socks on, laced them up, said, "Thanks a lot." When he came back in from his round, he came into the locker room. He said, "Eric," or Tiger's trainer came over and said, "Eric, Tiger would like to thank you. Can you come over and sit down and have lunch with him?" So I sat down and I'm talking to him, and My son walks by, he's a waiter, and he's just looking at me sitting with Tiger. And my daughter is a temperature taker. She's going around and she's taking the temperature of buffet items to make sure they're all good. And she walks by and she just is kind of keeping her eyes focused on me. So fast forward 11 years, Tiger's going to do one of the golf courses for us in China. And he comes out, and I walked up and I said, Tiger, you're not going to remember this, but you and I had lunch at Oak Hill in the locker room during the 2003 PGA Championship. He said, yeah, I wore your socks. And, it just kind of really made me feel special. And the fact that he even remembered it, it's good. It's the game of golf has been really good to us.
Yeah, well, and so I mean, listen, this is why I love doing podcasts, because you can do all the research you want on somebody, but that like Tiger Woods wearing your socks story, I mean, I'm going to tell both of my sons, you got to listen to this episode because of this story, I mean, because it's pretty cool. And you're right. I mean, it is cool that he remembered, but he remembered because I'm sure that stressed him out. His socks ripped,
Sure.
What's he going to do? And then here you are, here, just wear my socks, man, so, yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
The bad thing about it is he didn't make the cut either time at Oak Hill, so maybe the socks were an omen.
Yeah. So I wear a size 16 shoe. So I think that I don't know how big Tiger's foot is, but if I gave Tiger my socks, the heel would be up on his calf, probably.
Probably
so,
be knee socks.
Yeah. So I mean, it sounds like usually I ask you changed your schooling and went for hospitality. So I mean, I'm always interested in this because when somebody goes to college for that, I mean, how much of what you do did you learn in school, and how much have you just learned? I mean, you started to bring up yourself with mentors. I mean, I feel like with hospitality, you have to constantly adapt to what the consumer wants, right? So what does the education get you, and then where's the rest of it just being a chameleon, or to be able to adapt to what people want?
I think the education is a background, right? You need to know all of that stuff. Do you use it every day? Probably not, but it gives you a background. The mentorship, going to work at clubs, going to visit clubs. I've been to so many top 100 clubs in the United States. And every time you walk out of one of those places, you take something away with you that you say, oh, God, that's a good idea. I'm going to try that. We all steal ideas. None of us have original ideas. Somebody somewhere had an original idea, but I think the education is important. It makes you learn to understand. It makes you learn how to learn. We're working at a club, and I need to learn the culture at the club. And I think your education poised you for that. Your mentors kind of gave you the push. But education is important. I think that I don't think I would have gotten as far as I am today if I had not gone to school and focused on hospitality.
So do you have any big, you've had a lot of projects under your belt. Do you have anything you're working on that you want to share with anybody that's up and coming, or any announcements or anything that you're bringing to the table?
We're looking forward to the 2024 Mid-Am. I think that's a plus. We're looking at adding some amenities at Kinloch, remodeling and possibly adding in the future some additional cottages. Kinloch is a golf club. That's really all there is golf in a clubhouse to be able to relax and enjoy yourself. We have a great learning facility or training center at the club. It's got all the electronics that anybody could use, TrackMan and SimPut and all kinds of electronics. I think we need to stay ahead of the curve on being able to offer the things that Club Champion or some of those places offer to their clients. We need to be ahead of the curve. We need to have everything we can possibly have. We're not going to compete with Topgolf as far as that. I mean, that's a $2 or $3 million investment that we would have to make, and that's when you get to your ROI. That is a little difficult to swallow. But being able to, embrace all the technology that's out there right now for club fitting and ball flight and striking the ball and trainers, those are the kind of things we want to stay focused on. We want to stay a traditional club, and we want to stay with our culture the way it is. And there's a few guys that do smoke a cigar at Kinloch once in a while, but overall the culture is important, and we want to maintain that as much as we can.
I need to elaborate. I don't mind guys smoking a cigar. I just smoked one the other day on a fishing charter. But if that's all you have, are a bunch of guys smoking cigars together, it's hard. It's hard to bring in new members. That's So I want to clarify that so people don't tune me out for the rest of my career in having this podcast. So we're getting to that point in the show where it's my final question. I always like to ask people. So, to you, and it doesn't have to be when you're done with golf, but like when you leave a club, when you leave a team, and when you decide to finally hang up your hat, I guess, in managing these clubs and doing what you do, what do you want to be most remembered about? What is it that you as Eric want people to think of you that made you special in what you did?
I think when I walk away from a club, I want everybody to say that we were better off because Eric was there. And I feel that has been the case in not so much Sleepy Hollow, because I wasn't there that long. I was only there 6 months. But at Oak Hill, at the 27 Club, at Hazeltine, and hopefully at the end of my tenure at Kinloch, everybody's going to say, man, it was really good that we had Eric here. He had a lot of insight, a lot of foresight. We made some changes that we probably wouldn't have made without his leadership. And I think that's, it started out, one of the comments I sent to you in my notes is I like to see change, but not for the sake of change. I like to see change for the better of the club. And I hope that, when I do stop managing clubs, which my kids tell me that I will never stop, when I do stop managing clubs, that's what I want to be most remembered for.
Well, that's fantastic. And my kids say the same thing to me. They think I'll never stop but I can tell you just love what you're doing, and I love what I do. I love interacting with people, building teams, and when you love it, you don't see an end to that path. So I think that's awesome, Eric. Eric, you were a great guest. Hopefully, I was as good of a host for you. I really appreciate it, and hopefully, I get to meet you one day in person somehow.
Absolutely, Joe. Come on out and say hello anytime.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much. And for the Automation Nation listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of Automation Nation. Hopefully, tune in for the next one.